the age of citizens is changed. We've got more and more first-home buyers. We have younger population moving into the area, and the expectations of what they want from council and the services we provide is also changing. So the need to accelerate what we are doing came about as a result of that population growth and the changing demography as such. And it's important for us to obviously support that balance of that new urban growth and also keep that existing semi-rural feel of Camden. And we don't want to miss out on those opportunities that the smart community approach is giving us. We need to build the capacity for now and also the future. And I guess that's pretty much the catalyst.
Hi, Smart Community friends. In this episode of the Smart Community Podcast, I have a wonderful conversation with Gaya Gounder. Gaya is the Chief Information Officer at Camden City Council in New South Wales, Australia, and has several years of experience leading data, technology, and innovation teams across multiple levels of government. In this episode, Gaya begins by telling us about her background in the IT industry in both state and local government, and her passion for implementing solutions that make an impact on the community. Gaya then tells us how she got into the smart community space and what a smart community means to her. Gaya then takes us through some of the projects she's been working on, some use cases for digital twins, and the Camden Council Smart Community journey. Gaya then discusses the Camden approach to integrating across different disciplines, the different skill sets she has seen coming through the council, and the challenges that go with attracting those skill sets. She also discusses some of the challenges she has faced when developing strategies for local government. We finish our chat discussing the emerging trends of more emphasis on the ethics, privacy, and use of data for artificial intelligence and machine learning. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
Welcome to the Smart Community, Smart Regions, Smart Towns, and Smart Cities. It's where we live, work, and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.
Hello, Gaya. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Zoe, how are you?
I am fabulous. It's actually a beautiful day here. It's winter. I'm in a t-shirt and, I've been out and about, and so it's quite nice. How about you? How's it going down there?
Today is a bit different than yesterday. We had a glorious 23-degree day here in Camden, but today a bit gloomy again. So not that great, but all good.
Cool. Well, let's just jump straight into it. And can you tell us about your background and what you're passionate about?
Okay, I'm Gaya Gounder. I'm presently the Chief Information Officer here at Camden Council. I've had about 18 years of experience in the IT industry, of which 14 has been in government, both local and state. So my career in local government started, would you believe, Zoe, in Queensland in 2008 in corporate systems roles, and I've moved around since. In about 2020, I returned to local government as the Chief Information Officer at Camden, and over the years, I've developed an interest from being in a system sort of role to now focusing on cybersecurity and information governance. However, as an enterprise architect, I'm always thinking or taking a continual improvement approach to ensuring our technology and data are meeting the needs of the organization. I'm passionate about implementing solutions that make an impact to the community, and working in local government is completely rewarding for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes we forget how much local government interacts with the community on a day-to-day basis. Like, I know working with local government, I'm just constantly reminded of that. And then talking to friends and other people that work in local government, how much that interaction is right there. It's not one removed, it's like right there. And then the things that we can do within government and local government in particular, whether it is, like a systems improvement or something that has direct benefit to the community, it all has this indirect benefit to the community as well. And I think the more we think about that continuous improvement approach, we can you can use that to sell that if, people are kind of like, oh, why should we do this? It's really making sure that we are impacting the community in the most positive way. And the only way we can do that is by continually improving, because yesterday is not the same as today, and tomorrow will be different as well. So it's actually continuing to improve. And I think having people within local government like yourself that have this breadth of different systems thinking and that type of thing, you can really bring that knowledge in and help us improve that as well. So how did you get into the smart community space?
Okay, in terms of smart community or the concept, the timing of me commencing at council was perfect in some ways. In 2020, amidst a global pandemic, I start at council, and one of the first tasks for me was to actually undertake a review of our technology and systems landscape and propose a new plan, pretty much, because our previous strategy had lapsed. And in that process, we undertook a number of engagement sessions within the business. As you know, a council is not as though, it might be just a one business entity as such, but within it, I see that there's about 20 different businesses. So, one business unit is completely different to the other. We have ranges at one end, and we have parks and in open spaces teams on the other. So it's a completely different business model. And when engaging with this business stakeholders and trying to understand what we need to do and how we need to utilize technology and data, we came up with a wish list or action items of over 500 actions that we had to undertake. And that formed our roadmap essentially. And out of which a number of projects that came about related to making things work better. And that's how the smart cities work stream within the strategy got evolved. And that sparked my interest essentially. Okay, there's actually a whole niche area for us to look into rather than just look at, corporate systems upgrades and infrastructure upgrades. It's not that at all. There's more to it than just that. So in our digital innovation strategy at Camden Council, we have a dedicated work stream for smart cities, and that's how my interest in smart cities and communities came about as well.
Yeah, no, excellent. And as someone who has read and worked with that strategy, it is really, leading in the sense of you've got this, and we know that it all kind of integrates together when we talk about smart cities. We've got all these things, and I will go to what is a smart community to you next before we dive into a bit more detail. But I think separating it out like that, you can then build the foundations that then those smart city applications and the things that we want to do build on top of that. Because as we know, within councils, particularly there's, lots of legacy systems that are happening, that are in place and have been for many years, and maybe that they can be upgraded or that we just have to integrate with them at a certain level depending on what we want to do when we move forward. So having that kind of approach to digital innovation and continuing to improve, but then actually the smart city and community applications can sit on those really solid foundations is really important. So what is a smart community to you?
Well, a smart community to me is essentially an approach. We leverage new ways of thinking, use technology and data as enablers, and it's about making the places that we work, live and play more accessible, livable, and sustainable for all. So at Camden, for us, this is not just about catering for one set of people. It's, again, that catering it and making it livable and sustainable for everybody, and having that inclusion piece in it is really important.
Yeah, and so we did a bit of work with Camden around that smart community concept, and I think we got to a really nice place of what that vision will actually, what that vision is and that inclusivity. And it's really that Camden approach as well. There obviously are things across all different councils that have a common thread, but then putting that Camden approach or that context is really important, because you don't just want a cut and paste from some other strategy. They may have similar elements because we're, trying to solve maybe a common thread of problems, but without that context, it can't be implemented, successfully, right?
That's exactly right. And really, thanks to yourself, Zoe, as well, we now got, the vision's great, but we've also got those priorities and principles. And that's going to guide us through how we develop and implement the smart community initiatives for our local council. And the vision, priorities, and principles are great, but it's important that we do, and this, we're not doing tech for tech's sake, and we are creating a smart community for Camden that meets the real needs of the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like that's one of our principles is not doing tech for tech's sake. And I know you've used that line, when we're talking about different technology things, it's like, well, why are we doing this? Is it because we just need to have the latest tech, or is it solving the problem? So then going back to that solving the problem, then yes, actually that tech would be quite useful and we want that data. But really going back to what problem are we trying to solve? And also what future problems or what data can we use to make better decisions about future projects, and that type of thing as well is something that's really important. I know Camden have been focusing on too. So tell us about some of the projects and things you've been working on. So you're talking about the digital innovation strategy. What are some of your other kind of favorite projects? Doesn't necessarily have to be in the smart community space, but as I said before in the pre-chat, people love hearing from local government, I think, and well, I know because the engagement on the podcast is always quite high. So tell us about some of the projects and things you've been working on.
Well, I mean, in terms of the projects that we've already completed, internally, we've done a number of projects for our infrastructure. So we've essentially moved our server infrastructure from our on-premise environment to the hosted cloud environment. That's one thing that's more internal, very IT specific. We've actually also developed our cyber resilience strategy and a 3-year action plan. And again, these strategies have touch points into each other as well. And those were some of the major ones. We've also, in terms of the community aspect, we've released our booking system. Now, the members of the community can directly book for sports fields or the facilities, which is the halls and the like, online. And that's been a recent achievement as well. And again, all these projects stem off the digital innovation strategy. One of the cool projects that we are working on, and it's a partnership project that's worth mentioning, is the 3D modeling project. This is in partnership with the Department of Customer Service Special Services, who are helping us pretty much in developing our own version of the digital twin for Camden. So this is about modeling the entire Camden Council in 3D. And it's a very cool project, and we're sort of the pilot, and we are keen to see it going. The benefits of that project is twofold. So we've got an internal focus as well as a community focus on that project. So internal, essentially for our planners who are looking at future planning proposals or DAs and assessing an application. It is going to really help them and digitize and not looking at just PDF plans. I mean, previously we used to look at paper plans. We moved on to PDFs. Now we're actually going to look at those in 3D and assess them in real time, and also add contextual data like into the future, like transport data or pedestrian foot traffic, etc. So that's going to be really exciting for us to see to come to life, essentially. And the community benefit of that project is when we do those engagements and seek feedback from the community on what they think about this new proposal, is for them to have a feel of essentially the new proposal in 3D. So that is something really exciting, and can't wait for that to go live next year.
Yeah, and is that part of the acceleration fund?
Yes, that's right. So we were one of the first 5 projects that got selected last year as part of the New South Wales Smart Places Acceleration Program.
Yeah, excellent. And so that's basically, just for people that don't know, New South Wales government. So it's a local government, and then you're partnering with basically the state government, that level. They've got a digital twin already, or that they're developing or continuing to develop. And then yours is like a bit of a pilot to have that whole Camden local government area as a 3D model, and then the future use cases of adding more and more data essentially as well to make it that kind of digital twin approach. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And one of the objectives is to actually leverage existing data sets. So the product or the platform that this project will see coming will work closely with the spatial digital twin, which is the New South Wales government's version of the 3D model.
And I guess what are some of the other, like the use cases you're talking about? So your planners are going to use that for development applications and then engagement with the community. Are there any future thinking happening yet? I suppose you need to get it on the ground first, but of those future use cases, like things that you might, that people are maybe asking for, or just, starting to think about some of those new ideas? What do you have any ideas of future use cases for the digital twin?
The future use cases will be pretty much around the data that we're going to ingest into it. So, like I said, maybe the pedestrian foot traffic or even transport. I mean, Oran Park is just developing. Just for your listeners, Camden Council is one of the fastest growing councils in Australia. And we've got a train station planned, which is coming by 2026. We've got an airport not far away from us as well. So I think the impact of those developments, and also once it's developed, how the facilities are used, that data and putting that context when viewing a future proposal and engaging with the community, that'll be fantastic to see.
And I know the state government has a lot of different approaches, or that smart places approach, and having that state government level of, I don't want to say oversight, but just collaboration. I know that Camden's been involved, and yourself, you've been involved in a number of different groups and collaborations. Can you give the listeners a bit of an idea of what's happening in New South Wales at the moment? And, we're getting all this rapid growth and things, I guess, in the Western Parkland City. Can you give us a little bit of a journey of where we've come from and then where we're kind of heading in terms of Camden and the smart places approach and all this kind of activity happening?
I guess, so obviously in New South Wales, we are going into that greater cities model. So Western Parkland City is one, but you have the River City, you have the various cities that are forming. So I see it as a collaboration, really working really well. So with Western Parkland City, we've got our 8 councils that work together. We already share data sets, and we have an open data platform as well as part of the Western Sydney City deal. And the way it has worked so far is a collaboration exercise, and we couldn't do it alone. As you know, councils work within restricted budgets, and we always try to look for better ways of working and with doing more with less. So these type of initiatives like the City Deal and the collaboration opportunities that we're getting has been really fantastic. It is making us, I guess, accelerate in some ways the projects and the type of initiatives we want to put forward as well. And more recently, we're also working, again, within the digital action plan, I guess, for the Western Parkland City. We're working on a cyber risk management framework as well. So we're not just looking at tech and, I guess, smart projects that we're working on, but also taking that risk-based approach and looking at the type of risks that these projects might be open to.
And when we were kind of working together, looking at the smart community approach and that type of thing, I know a lot of what we were talking about was this kind of imperative. It's not just this smart stuff all over here happening and, it's really great, it's a value add. It's actually, we need to embed it into what we're doing because, as I said, fastest growing council, we've got more people coming in, we need to do more with less. I guess in terms of that smart community approach, what are some of the things that you can see that really aren't kind of these value adds, but setting up those foundations? I guess what I'm trying to ask is from a Camden approach, why did you decide that we needed to go on this smart community journey? Obviously there was a whole bunch of the collaboration and things like that happening, but I'm, I guess, thinking what was the catalyst to kind of go, okay, yes, this is the way that we're going to go? Was it, you saw other things happening, or was it information coming from the state government, or was it examples overseas, or just this natural progression? What was the kind of catalyst to kind of go, yes, we need this smart approach?
I guess catalyst for us is our growth, without a doubt. We are growing too fast. The Camden area is experiencing a significant population growth and also the uplift in urban development as such. And as a result of that growth, I mean, the community is evolving, and also the demography of our area is changing. So the age of our citizens is changed. We've gotten more and more first-home buyers. We have younger population moving into the area, and the expectations of what they want from council and the services we provide is also changing. So we need to, I think the need to accelerate what we are doing came about as a result of that population growth and the changing in demography as such. And it's important for us to obviously support that balance of that new urban growth and also keep that existing semi-rural feel of Camden. And we don't want to miss out on those opportunities that I guess this, the smart community approach is giving us. We need to build the capacity for now and also the future. And I guess that's pretty much the catalyst.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think what's been obviously like that accelerator or made it a bit, I don't want to say easier because there's lots of challenges, obviously, but like you talked about that collaboration that's happening across the 8 different council areas, but also the state government level, and obviously an injection of funding as well, because that growth is happening. When a lot of councils, particularly regional councils, are going, okay, well, how do we, like those economies of scale aren't there necessarily, so they just don't know where to start. How do you think that we could, I guess, integrate better across the different disciplines? So obviously we've got local government, we've got state government, but you're also working, I guess, with private sector partners, academia, all those type of things. What is Camden's approach to that, and how are you going to, I guess, continue those collaborations moving forward?
I think the best way to answer that, I guess, is firstly, we need to have that alignment with what the council wants and where we're heading, and having that alignment with not just internally for the business, but also mainly to the community as to, why we're here. We're here to serve them, of course. So, and once we have the alignment and we have a list of initiatives, or we obviously go through a prioritization, we can't do everything at once. So that's important. But once we have a list of projects or an action plan, the best way to approach that is, okay, how can we then achieve those? Like, for example, the 3D modeling project, yes, Camden had this, we actually undertook a pilot on our own prior to the acceleration fund becoming available. So if we had to do it on our own, we probably would have had to shell out a lot more money, but also would have just thought about Camden and about our council alone. Now, by leveraging the fund, of course, but also the partnership, we are able to, say, roll out this project. Once our pilot is successful, of course, more councils can get on board and leverage the same platform. So I guess for every project that's on your roadmap, it's important to see who are your best stakeholders or partners that you can leverage, and then take advantage of any grant opportunities that are coming available, keeping those lines of collaboration open, say with the state governments or the federal government or even the local universities and the academia, like you said, asking or seeking or finding out to see if they have similar intentions or projects up their sleeve, running those little pilots as well. And, we all talk about agile approach. So if you want to fail, you fail fast and see if it's worked or not. And if it works, then that's great. Keep moving forward with those initiatives, I guess. So we just have to, like I said earlier, new ways of thinking. So we just have to forget about those projects running in a controlled environment with set scope and timelines and budgets, because those, we won't have money for all projects and all initiatives at once. So we just have to find newer ways and get creative in how we find and can make those initiatives work.
I like that. And I think that agile approach is really important. And whether, it's pure agile, if it's an IT project, or just those different ways of doing things. And I know when we were developing the strategy, it was a bit of a different way, one, because it was all online. But I think if you want to think differently, you actually need to build the strategy or the projects or whatever differently as well, because you get people in a different mindset. It's not just like, okay, we're going to go this way. And yes, you have a plan, but within that plan, then you continue to cycle around and work out, okay, well, that worked, or, oh no, we're not going to go that way because people, I might think your problem is A, but actually after we've spoken to all the stakeholders, it's actually A+1, or, maybe it's Z. And those are the biggest problems we want to try and solve. But then also thinking about the vision and thinking about those future problems, then how do we get there as well? So there's all these little steps along the way that you don't know all of the answers to right now. And that's okay. And I think that's why thinking about, some of the words we were using were like, innovation with rigor as well, which is that risk-based approach like you were talking about. We're not going to say, we're not going to do anything because there's a cyber risk, so we're not going to do anything. We're going to also develop the strategy alongside that, the cyber, security strategy or whatever. But I think the other thing is, and something we talked about as well, is if we don't do this, there's still a cyber risk, right? Still legacy systems, still these things that maybe don't have the updates that they require or have these gaping holes in them and that type of thing. So I think this awareness and this focus has really helped everybody to kind of appreciate that digital isn't going anywhere. We have to keep adapting. We have to keep thinking differently. No matter what sector or area you're in, you will be affected by this. So yeah, I think that's as a council, that's something we need to really be cognizant of, which I think can cause a bit of overwhelm for particularly smaller councils when they go, well, we don't have those skill sets, or how do we think about this? We're flat out, filling the potholes kind of thing. If they can learn from other councils as well, which is, that collaboration approach, and you can feel supported, I think that's really important too. Just on skill sets, because I know that you've got a certain amount of skill sets, but there's within your team, but it's continuing to grow. And with this growth, what are some of those key skill sets that councils will need or need to have some kind of access to that were different, maybe even say 3 to 5 years ago? What are those skill sets coming through now?
So again, touching in on continual improvement, I guess, using RPAs, the robotic process automation. Automation is the biggest skill set, I think, growth that hasn't been there before, but it is now. So just looking at automating a number of our tasks, not just IT, I'm talking, putting those smart workflows in. So we are doing things a lot faster, quicker, and in more efficient manner. That is a bigger skill set I've seen. Cyber is definitely one, but fundamentally also we are in skill shortage of a lot of business analysts as well. So trying to, again, ask those questions about why do you do it that way? And just make people think as well is important. And on top of all of that, data. Business intelligence is the other skill set that we are in demand for now. And that is becoming a big focus for council as well.
And do you see attracting these skill sets as a big challenge for council, or are you finding, is it just there's a lack of them, so the supply is down? What are some of the big challenges, I guess, in skill sets, but then we can also then talk about some of the challenges just in this approach overall?
Yeah, timing wise, it's been a challenge to recruit, full stop. So with the pandemic, we've had a big shortage in skilled workers here in Australia. And I think it's not just councils, it's everywhere. But for local government, specifically with everyone working from home for a long time now, and now most of us are returning back to work, they don't actually want to come to work and be in the office. So previously, we used to have a big selling point of working closer to home, etc. But now you have staff working in Cairns, getting, Sydney salaries. So it is really hard for us to recruit, especially we have conditions of a few days in the office and they don't want to come. So that is one of the biggest challenge I've found. But I'm trying to, get creative. Once again, trying to see if we can have more, I guess, partnerships. Again, trying to see if we can have interns, etc., graduates. I'm trying to see, and also upskilling internal staff is another way that I'm trying to see if that would work.
Now, we're going to go to the future in a second, but I'm keen to hear, you've been on this journey for a little bit now and, been involved in a number of different kind of projects and then strategy development and that type of thing. What are some of the biggest challenges, for local governments when developing these strategies? And I guess some of the challenges you expected, but maybe some of the ones you didn't expect too, and then how we overcame those as well.
I think this is my enterprise architect lens in developing a strategy, I guess. It's always important to understand your current state really well and then to mark out where you want to be, right? So to understand your current state, you really need to dig deeper and find out, okay, what are some of the things that you're doing really well in whatever it may be, if it's smart or cyber or data, in whatever strategy you want to put forward. Understanding that sense of, where you are right now is really important. Documenting and getting those artifacts together. Again, in terms of the future planning and where we want to be, what our future vision is, that is the second part of it. And then that will make it easier to draw out that roadmap or the strategy itself, I guess. But in terms of the challenges that I've had, I mean, in some ways, I've had less of a challenge. I had lovely partners like yourself working with us to pull that or draw that information out of our business stakeholders. One of the challenges is that the business sometimes cannot articulate to say where they want to be. They know they want something, but just getting it out in words. And I think that is a challenge, and trying to put that on paper or a document is the hardest thing for me. And again, working with yourself, it has been really great in achieving those and overcoming those as well.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think it is one of those things where when you're on the other side trying to draw that information out, you're asking all those questions, you're putting it down. But if you actually flip yourself back into that, you got to go, oh yeah, if I was this person, where would I want to be and how do I articulate that? And it's a mindset shift too as well. If you've been told the whole time you've worked there, I don't know, if you've had a great idea but it's never come to fruition, then you stop having those great ideas, right, as well. So you need to really draw out. And I know when I was talking to some of the departments, they go, oh, but it's not my problem isn't a smart, it's not a smart thing, or if where I want to be, it's what is that, like, what has smart got to do with that? And that's where that embedding of the smart community approach really, and we can have a strategy like we said, but if we don't change the way we're thinking internally, it's that new ways of thinking, and also the governance that goes along with that as well. Like there's so many different layers and different parts that need to come together. But it is about starting the journey, right? Start wherever you're starting, but know what your starting point is too as well, which is what you were saying. Understanding that current state is sometimes a very difficult task and sometimes the most difficult. And bringing all of that together and saying, yes, this is where we're starting is also something that should not be undertaken lightly, I think.
Yes, definitely. And one of the things that I would give credit for at Camden is that innovation is one of our core values, and which I thought was very interesting when I started here. And I like the approach that we take. And recently, in the last year, we have something called the innovation space, and where ideas from all parts of the business, anyone within council can post an idea, and those small ideas bring big changes. So that's, I guess, a bottom-up approach to innovation. And we also have, with the pandemic, we have a recovery and a reset program in place where we're trying to accelerate some of those quick wins and those projects that we can get up to speed. And there's so much leadership support to that as well. So there's a top-down approach to innovation. So I guess the strategy is one thing, but also when you talk about culture and that promoting of those ideas and making them work, and organizationally, when it's supported, it's great to see that's overcome.
Yeah, I touching on that, I think I also had, like, to be working with Camden, my job it wasn't super hard to get those ideas out in that instance because that culture of innovation is there. When I think about some of the other councils that haven't quite, they might be early on in the journey and there's a lot of resistance to change, whereas Camden, they might have been just getting those ideas out onto paper. But you're right, like, I think there was lots of, I guess, that setting of that culture. Oh yeah, we know that we can innovate. We know that we can have ideas. And you touched on a really important point, which is leadership support as well, because that, and not even just support, but that next level of drive, I guess, from that leadership level, because that then really allows people to have those new ideas in a safe space, but then it can actually be accelerated or supported and scaled as well. Because it's one thing to do a pilot, like you said, but then actually how it can scale really needs that leadership approach, because you need budgets, you need time, you need resources. Like, it's not magic. And I think that's really key as well. Now let's zoom to the future. What are the emerging trends that people aren't talking about enough?
Well, if you ask me about what they're not talking enough, maybe it's not that they're not talking enough. It's about maybe that they're not doing enough, or maybe I don't see much happening in the space. Is we hear a lot about AI and machine learning, and we try to use those in our day-to-day and bring that into our smart initiatives, I guess. I think what we should be talking about more is around privacy and ethics around data, and especially the data that we collect and we manage. I mean, we're talking more recently about CCTVs and installing those smart devices, tapping into the CCTV technology, etc. But I mean, while it's not used here in Camden, one of the things that I'm always thinking about is, hang on, who has access to that data, and especially what are we doing with that data? So more broadly in the industry, I think there should be emphasis on the ethics and the privacy and the use of the data that we collect, especially around the initiatives that we put for machine learning, and where we're trying to automate a lot of things and identify, say, a human being walking across or a pet, etc. What are we doing with it, and how secure is that data?
Yeah, I think that's a big one, and it's actually one that's coming up quite a lot on the podcast. And I think we're going to get more conversations happening, like you said, but then actually actioning that as well will be, I think that's the kind of next wave of things. People asking questions, why, what am I doing with this? And then not necessarily what am I allowed to do with this, but what could this be used for, and how do we prevent it from using from bad? But what are the good things that we can use? Because we all know that there's good and bad in every piece of technology. It's not necessarily, the technology itself isn't inherently evil, but evil things can be done with it. So I think there's having more conversation about that, but then having more action about that too. What do we actually want to do, and what decisions do we want to make? Like, is it that we're going to say no to this application of this technology because it has these applications, but actually they don't outweigh the negative impacts that it's going to have on our community potentially, or a certain sector of our community as well that may not have access now, or could be in a worse spot? I think we're going to start having those hard conversations moving forward.
Yes, you're right. And I guess in terms of the ability for citizens, awareness for them to have their say and say, okay, no, I don't want you to collect this data. I don't think they even can ask those questions or think about it these days. So I think that awareness is also important, and advocating to our citizens to say, okay, maybe, it is your data that we're collecting, so you have a say in here, and having those transparent conversations, I think, is important.
Yeah, and I think it's about increasing data literacy as well. And as a government or an entity making decisions, we have to be able to articulate why we're making decisions and why it's important that we need to be making said decisions and that type of thing. And then it's an exchange of value for that data, rather than just a black box that nobody knows what's happening. I think, you're right. We're going to have more and more conversations about that, and they have to include the community as well. Well, Guy, it's been so great to have you on the podcast. I'm so glad that we finally got to have this conversation, and, I love the work that Camden's doing, and I know more and more is happening in the space as well. So it's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you. So thank you for joining me. I just have one last question, which is, how can people connect with you?
People can connect with me on LinkedIn, Zoe. So you can find me. Gaya Gounder is my handle. So you can connect me that way and reach out, and always happy to help any other councils that are in this journey, and have those conversations and collaborate as well. So great to talk to you, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
No worries. Well, I look forward to our next conversation, which hopefully won't be too far away. And thanks again for joining me. Talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Are you looking for an engaging speaker, MC, or facilitator for your next big event? Then we've got you covered. Zoe is a go-to speaker, MC, and conversation facilitator with a difference. She's a master at simplifying the complex and making connections you might never see. Book Zoe for your next event. Email hello@mysmart.community or head over to her speaker page, www.mysmart.community/speaking.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community Podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community/podcast. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community. You can also find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter @SmartComHQ. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we would love for you to leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears and eyes, so thank you for your support. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.